Welcome to Just Break Up, the podcast about love, heartbreak, and all the relationship advice you don't want to hear. My name is Sierra DeMulder.
And I'm Sam Blackwell, and today we're going to answer a letter from somebody who is trying to break up with someone she never actually dated. But before we begin, we just want to give you our Surgeon General's warning, which is that Sierra and I are not licensed mental health practitioners.
No, we're not professionals. We're not trained in any of this. We're honestly right now, like, it's so hot in my house because there's like a little bit of a heat wave that I'm just recording in my fucking underwear, like
She is.
whitey tighties up in here.
Hop on YouTube to see that if you want.
So please take our advice as you see fit from two strangers. One of them is in their unattractive, like not sexy underwear. We're talking like up to my belly button. We're only here to offer our humble and hot musings, hopefully to shed some understanding, like physically hot.
Yeah,
like
well, also hot. Spiritually,
Yeah.
physically, sexually,
Spiritually.
emotionally.
This is all to say, we're only here to offer our humble musings to hopefully shed some understanding and maybe some laughs about the incredibly rewarding, but mostly confusing and like sweaty experience that is love.
It can be sweaty sometimes. That's true.
Yeah, oh, totally. Okay, so for today's check-in topic, we have a special reflection because July 16th is Just Breakup's anniversary. And so Tuesday of this week, we have been doing this podcast for 6 years. 6 years.
That's a lot of years.
Weekly episodes for 6 years. And so we just wanted to take this moment to obviously thank our listeners and also reflect on our year. An acquaintance I have has been with her wife for almost 20 years. And every year she writes this sort of reflection on the year past, on the highs and on the lows, and on what they learned about each other and what they struggled with and what they hope for the future. And I thought Sam and I could do some sort of quick bastardized version of that. Because we really do feel like we learn so much about ourselves doing this podcast, both professionally, you know, like what it is like to run your own business, run a business that's based on your opinions and, you know, the labor of you and your best friends. And also interpersonally, I'm a better wife and a better friend and a better sister because of this show, because I get to learn alongside of all of you wonderful people and learn from my dearest thing, Sam. And so I thought we could just share some reflections from this year.
Cool. I love it. Okay. So the first thing that I have learned from this particular year of the podcast is that everyone is experiencing things so differently, and we all are just assuming that we know everything about everyone. And I think that this is like coming out the most because we've been doing office hours this year, and our office hours, they're, you know, like somebody will posit a question in our office hours, and then like there will be like 17 different interpretations of what's going on and like how people should respond and react. And I think it's just like a good reminder for me that my experience isn't the only experience, and that like there's so much wealth of knowledge to be gained from understanding and sort of listening to what other people are going through and how they're understanding what's happening as well.
Yeah, I think that's so true. And I remember learning that for the first time, I don't know, a couple years into the podcast, really sitting in it and knowing it to be so true, because you and I have read probably over 7,000 letters at this point, and there's so many common themes, so many shared lived experiences, but everyone is going through those experiences through their own unique lens that's affected by their childhood and their attachment style and their physical body, and their dating history or lack of dating history, you know, whether they're hungry or not. Like, everything is so uniquely positioned through our own lens. And like, you and I are the perfect example of that. We are such kindred spirits. We're so similar in so many ways. And we're so different in so many ways. And that's truly because of what I listed before. And to me, this is so comforting, truthfully, because then I feel like I used to just throw myself up against these conflicts or throw myself up against these truths that I thought were so universal. And when somebody didn't have the same truth as me, I would just rail against not them as a person, but against that conflict. And I just truly wouldn't understand. And now I kind of get that, like, sometimes we just don't. Sometimes it's coming from a too deep of a level that that person just has a different worldview than I do or whatnot, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I think this is something that I understood intellectually before doing the podcast, but I think this experience of doing it and just being able to interact with and understand so many different ways of being that it's like, it's hard to like not feel it in my body now in like different ways than I did before, where it's like, ooh, this person, the way that this person describes the situation is like so different than how I would describe it. Or even like the two of us sitting here and answering questions and you being like this. And I'm like, oh yeah, I know that's where that sits in your body. Right. Like it's just, yeah, it's been I think it's made me a better person. It's probably made me a worse podcast host, to be honest. It's like...
That is so true. Yeah. Interpersonally though, I'll say for me, I feel like it relieves me of the pressure to fully understand or be fully understood in order to move on or in order to make a thoughtful decision or whatever. The other thing that I think a lot about when I reflect on this past calendar year, y'all, you know, the OGs or the people who subscribe on the Patreon have like been following this subtle or not so subtle story, which is I had like a anxious attachment spiral attack, like an asthma attack, but like with my deepest fears about being unlovable. Over a year ago, and it kind of came out of nowhere because I consider my relationship and my life to be very stable and secure and healthy and peaceful and resilient to struggles and growth and stuff like that. And from that experience, it deepened my own understanding of my anxiety and my core fears. And, you know, I've said on the podcast before that when we started this show, we were just two little ignorant, opinionated people. I didn't even know what an attachment style was. And now, you know, it just shows, and I want to say this to all my other fellow anxiously attached cuties, like I have learned so much about my attachment style and my anxiety over the last 6 years, and I keep learning. I keep accruing understanding and knowledge about myself and how my body and my heart how we process things. And the big lesson for me this year and the unpacking and understanding of it is that so much of my anxious attachment style manifests physically. And if I can soothe the physical, if I can like wait those 10 seconds or calm the body down or recognize that I'm not in any physical danger, I can access like a little bit more conscious, autonomous decision making around that. And I definitely think that's my big lesson from JBU this year.
Yeah, definitely. I think that both of us have experienced some of this year. And I think like for me, it's I have PTSD from my experience with my dad who committed suicide. And part of that has included like triggers and flashbacks. And I've been doing a lot of like emotional and intellectual work with my therapist about how to manage those things as they come up. And this year, what's been happening is that my body gets triggered and has like a very physical reaction. And then my head and my heart are both like, yep, we know what this is. Like, these are the things that we do. Like, this is how I see you support yourself. And my body's still like, what's happening? What's happening? And it's just it's like a good reminder of the fact that like all three of those things are integrated, right? Like, and that that actually tending to the body, right? Like figuring out what are ways to get yourself back in your body and not just like flying around in the ether or whatever is like also part of the work, right? And that doesn't mean that it has to be like, you have to be like doing yoga and you have to be like super flexible or like whatever, but it means like,
I am inflexible,
right?
friends.
Absolutely. Like you don't need to run marathons or whatever.
Emotionally and physically.
Like what are the things that you do, right? Like putting your feet on the ground, like going outside and like touching things that are real, like whatever it is that like helps you get back in your body. But that's something that I've really had to like work on and learn this year as well. So they're all integrated, turns out you can't just ignore the fact that your body because it like keeps a score or whatever. So fun. Another thing to worry about, I guess.
I want my body to be like terrible at math, but in fact it's excellent at it.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Okay. And then the other thing that I'll talk about from this calendar year is that, I think this year has been you and me kind of coming back to the core of what this podcast is and why we do it. I think that when we started this podcast, we just wanted to like be two friends who had fun and answered letters from folks and figured out a way to make this podcast sustainable for us to be able to do it. And then, for a few years there, we were trying to make this podcast into something really big, right? And I think that this year it was kind of the two of us realizing that like the work that we were doing to try and make this podcast something it wasn't was like grating on us and making us feel like we weren't living in our values or that we weren't doing what we wanted to be doing with this podcast, which was, again, just like us hanging out and inviting people into conversation and trying to meaningfully connect with people who are interested in relationships and growth and, self-love and challenging systemic institutions doing bad things to people. And this year was really us coming back to that. And I think it's been honestly like just really lovely to be able to say like, we're going to focus on making this podcast sustainable by inviting people who love us to support us on Patreon. But other than that, like we're just going to keep doing what we do because we love it and appreciate it. And because we're able to do that rather than trying to commercialize this into something that is going to be big or, I don't know, profitable or capitalistic or whatever words you want to use for it. Like that has been, I think, really lovely.
I think there's a deeper lesson that can be applied universally, which is just really putting energy into what is serving you and what makes you feel good and feel in your values and feel joy and love. And I think that you and I just had to remember that 6 years in, we really love doing this. And even on the days where it feels more like a job than a passion, we love each other. We love talking. They're the core of the podcast that we started, this desire to understand ourselves and others and show up that much more fully and capable in relationships that are already so hard. I really love that core has always been there and we've always been able to tap back into that. And I love applying that lesson to the other things in my life. What is taking away my peace? What is feeding me? What is nurturing me? What is asking too much of me, and what is stealing my joy? Because I think that's what it was ultimately for us, is that we have miraculously, we make this podcast with my other best friend, Spencer, and we have miraculously still loved each other through this whole thing and like loved having conversations and found recording to be really easy and fun and joyful. And so it was so refreshing and inspiring to talk to you and be like, okay, well, where's our joy?
Yep.
How can we find it? How can we feed it, and how can we keep it?
Yeah.
I definitely
and
agree.
those were conversations that we had to have as a trio of people in relationship with each other, right? Like we had to look at what was going on and pause and say like, what if we did something different?
Yeah.
How are you feeling about this? Because like,
mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Yeah, totally.
And like those conversations, I think were really challenging in some ways, but they were also really affirming in a lot of ways because it offered us the opportunity to know each other more deeply and to come back to what we wanted to do, which was, again, just like be with each other and be with a bunch of folks who listen and support us, who share values with us and want to support us because we're doing good things, right? Like, because we're living in our values and having conversations that we want to have. And I think that that's really meaningful. And I think I'm glad that we had those conversations and sort of came to some shared understanding of how we want to be in this podcast again.
And on that note, we want to extend our everlasting, ever-present gratitude to our listeners, whether this is your first episode and you're like, what the fuck are these people
seriously, why are they talking about that?
Or, your 400th episode. This podcast still gives us a lot of joy. It's a lot of work, and it takes a lot of intention, but we're really happy to be doing it, and we're really grateful that you're here listening to us. As Sam said, if you want to continue to support us, if you can, jump over to Patreon, patreon.com/justbreakuppod, to give us a little thanks or a tip or however you want to show up. You can subscribe there for 1 month or for the year or whatnot for as little as $5. And that helps make this labor a little lighter. And if that's not how you can support us, that's okay too. We're just grateful that you're here listening. It's surreal that so many of us are still, it's surreal that so many of you are still on this journey with us. And we hope that we hope that you can feel the joy too, is what I want to say.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that.
So happy anniversary.
Happy anniversary. Cheers to that.
Let's dive into today's letter. It is coming to us from Messy Love, whose pronouns are they, them, who is writing to us from the West Coast of America. Hi, Sam and Sierra. I have been a listener since the very beginning. I found y'all back in 2018. Oh my God, 6 years ago. During my first breakup, and your words of wisdom and kindness have guided me through life ever since. I'm writing to you today because I am in a major pickle. I, 26 non-binary, and my partner, 27 female, she, her, let's call her Kay, have been in a secure and loving relationship for nearly 4 years. She is truly the best person I've ever met, and we plan on being together for many years to come. For the first 2 years of our relationship, we were monogamish, open to other connections and thinking about being poly without acting on it. This is relevant. Kay and I moved to the West Coast about 2 years ago so that I could attend grad school. I met someone, let's call her Phoebe, 24 female, she, they, in my cohort, and I was instantly drawn to her. Over the past 2 years, Phoebe and I became very close and connected over music, queerness, neurodivergence, and much more. I developed a crush and told Kay about my feelings for Phoebe. Kay and I decided together to try being poly, as it was something we had discussed before, and now there was someone one of us was interested in. Phoebe and I started talking more flirtatiously and discussed that she had been in poly relationships before. We communicated every day and sent each other suggestive Snapchats occasionally. Now here comes the problem. Phoebe has been in a monogamous relationship with a cis man, 25 years old, for the past 3 years. She has told me for months that she knew he wasn't right for her, that she was going to leave him, and they almost broke up 4 times over the past 2 years. Moving on, Phoebe and I formed a deep emotional connection, and in March of this year, we confessed that we had feelings for one another, but that nothing will happen as she is with her boyfriend. From here on out, Phoebe and I have had a very on and off friendship as I try to set boundaries to simmer the feelings down, as I also did not want her to cheat on her boyfriend. Currently, in June, Kay is frustrated with how much this, quote, friendship has impacted my mental health. Ultimately, I know Kay is right, and she wants to distance myself from Phoebe as she is entirely unavailable to me. The logical part of me agrees with her, but the emotional part of me is having a hard time letting go. Less than a month ago, I told Phoebe I loved her, and she said it back. I'm sorry this was so long, but here's the point. How do I move on from Phoebe? I'm having a hard time, quote, breaking up with her, as she is my close friend too, and we never actually dated. We never even kissed. I need advice on moving on from something that has never even started. I'm embarrassed and guilty for letting it get this far, and I didn't mean to fall in love, but I did. Am I allowed to block her? What do I do?
Oh, All right, Musty Love, thank you so much for writing to us. This just has a mixture of so many different things that would, I think, make lots of people feel lots of big, painful emotions. This is a thing about sort of star-crossed lovers, right? Like where it's like, oh, we would be together if only
Forbidden
we could be
fruit.
together. Absolutely. This is also about navigating, opening up a relationship in a way that you haven't before, right? Which comes with its own sort of learnings and different emotions that come up as well. This is also like such a frustrating experience because it feels like there's an easy solution to this, which is that, Phoebe just breaks up with her boyfriend who she says she doesn't want to be with and decides to be with you. Right. There's just like so many things that are like really heightened here. Right. And it makes sense to me that you feel like you can't find solid ground in this relationship because guess what, friend? There is no solid ground in this relationship, right? Like the rules keep changing. The things that you're standing on keep moving. The rug keeps getting pulled out from under you. And I totally empathize with all of the stuff that you're feeling about this. I empathize with Phoebe. I know that it's hard to be in a relationship that you don't necessarily want to be in, but not know how to get out of it, right? And I empathize deeply with your partner as well, who's looking at you and saying, hey, friends, the ground under you is pretty unstable. Do you think maybe we should be moving off of that ground? And all of this makes so much sense to me. And I can totally see why everyone is feeling a lot of feelings about this situation. And I also want to validate, too, that you maybe are not in a quote unquote relationship, right, with Phoebe, that you may or may not be dating her. And also you are deeply emotionally enmeshed with her, which is like basically the same thing. So like, this is not just like why am I so crazy about my friend, right? Like this is like, oh no, you are feeling a lot of different feelings about what feels like kind of a volatile, emotionally involved relationship with somebody who you can't actually be emotionally involved with at this moment, which is really challenging. So we're going to offer some advice and some musings on this in just a moment. But before that, we are going to take a quick break.
All right, welcome back, my darlings, and thank you to our letter writer again for trusting us with this letter. I agree with everything Sam said. This makes so much sense to me. And just pause right now and give yourself permission to feel whatever you want to feel, even though this person was never your official partner. We get so many letters about like, oh, and I never even dated them, or we only dated for 3 weeks, or la 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 la. And that's just a means for us to try to police our emotional responses. And guess what? It never fucking works. It never like leads us to less emotion, right? Instead, it leaves us to like unexamined emotions, unnurtured emotions, and those just simmer and fester and get bigger and worse. So right now, you have every permission to feel a way about this friendship, quote, friendship, whatever this is. You have the right to feel whatever you want about it because you are emotionally invested. Something I love about the non-monogamous world is, again, how it challenges us to look at relationships differently and challenges us to look at ownership and affection and intimacy differently. And I want you to extend that thoughtfulness to the idea of friendships and romantic relationships. We prescribe like, quote, rules to them, but if you strip them of those titles, we're talking about another human being that you care about. You care about Kay, you care about Phoebe, another human being that you are finding it hard to be in relationship with because the parameters of your relationship aren't aligning with your desires for them, right? Boom. All of a sudden, you've got full permission to feel those feelings because you're not looking at it like, oh, well, this is my friend and I can't justify my feelings or whatnot. I also want to say really quickly before I say more, I read this letter And I thought, oh, this person has a lot of integrity and I really respect them. I see your relationship at work. I see your communication at work. I see how you immediately brought this crush to your partner and how you and your partner navigated that. I see how you now are seeking support from your partner after this friendship with Phoebe went a little awry or whatever. And I'm going to ask you to lean on that integrity as you move forward, accepting that if this is just a friendship, then you need a place to put the other feelings, or else it can't be a sustainable friendship. And I'm not asking you to throw them away forever, but face to face to you and I back and forth right now. Tell me, like, if nothing changes, do you think anything's going to change? You know, if you don't stop the way you behave around Phoebe, the access she has to you, the access you have to her, do you think something's going to change? Because I don't think your feelings are going to magically disappear. This is all to say that if this is a friendship that you want to prioritize, that you don't want to go to block or whatever, then you need to put action into that friendship so that it can be sustainable long term. Meaning, maybe you do need some time not talking to that person. Maybe maybe you need to use some of that integrity and be like, okay, so I know that I can't text with Phoebe because it will get too suggestive. It'll get too flirty and it'll activate those feelings again. Or I know that if I spend one-on-one time with Phoebe, I'm going to want to put my mouth on her mouth. You know what I mean? Like, and then you put those little barriers. You know, like if you don't want to go cold turkey from this person, then you put barriers in between you and that person or those feelings. I'm not telling you to swallow those feelings forever. I'm just saying you need to put action behind the word friendship if you want it to be a sustainable one. Or you block them.
Yeah,
Sam?
Absolutely. No, I'm with you on the blocking. No, I think that it's important to also, think about this as like, this isn't just a friendship, right? Like this is way more involved than just a friendship would be, right? And I think it's important to recognize that like you two are either stepping really close to or stepping beyond the boundaries of Phoebe's relationship with her partner, right? Like I know that you two haven't physically crossed the line. And what would her partner say if you told him that she was like telling you that she wanted to break up with him, that she loved you, that she wanted to be with you, right? Like this is not just a friendship, because this is beyond that, right? Like this is an emotional connection, an emotional experience that the two of you are having, that for me, in my understanding of how many relationships work, is that this would be outside of the boundaries of their relationship, of Phoebe's relationship with her partner. And like that adds another layer of this like emotional fraughtness to this. And I say this because I want you to take a step back from this and say, this isn't just a friendship that's gotten weird, right? Like where I shouldn't be behaving this weirdly around this person. Like, why can't I handle this? I can handle my other friendships, right? Like this is about an emotional connection, an emotional relationship that the two of you are existing in that is going beyond friendship into something that is much more intense, that is much more fraught, and that I think is kind of outside of your values as somebody who's trying to respect the boundaries of Phoebe's relationship with her partner. So I think that that's also kind of some stuff that might be coming up for you around why this feels so intense for you. And, if you were somebody who is saying, I've gone beyond my boundaries and my values with this person, what I would immediately say to you is like, okay, then we need to take a step back, right? We need to get you back into alignment with what those values and understandings of what you want to be doing are. And we need to reset, right? We need to figure out like how to get you back to where you need to be. And I think that the best way to do that, the way that can help the most, is by removing yourself from the fraught emotional quicksand that is this, I'm not even going to say friendship, I'm going to say this relationship with Phoebe, right? Like this is just a very unstable place for you to be in this moment. And part of what you need to do is come back to a place where you can put your feet on the ground and say, okay, this isn't moving anymore, right? Like this is stable, right? Like this is a place where I can trust that nothing outside of my experience is going to confuse me. And I think that the way to do that is by putting as much emotional and physical distance as you can between you and her. And I'm open to blocking, right? Like I don't think that blocking her is at all an overreaction in this moment, because she's done a lot of shitty things to you. Like I always feel so defensive of our
you just need
listeners.
space.
Yeah, absolutely. She's telling you she's going to break up with her boyfriend. Yeah, and then she's not doing that. She's telling you that she loves you, but then she continues to go home to her boyfriend every night, right? Like,
well, and you know what?
This is, it's just.
Yeah, let me jump on that for a second, only because what if Phoebe was perfect and just not emotionally available? Then our letter writer should still put in the block or still put in that emotional distance. It's not, the block isn't an action in response to terrible behavior. The block is for you. The block is for the letter writer so that they can put distance, they can access space, so they can not fixate or obsess over the forbidden fruit of this relationship that's not going to come to be, and y'all know that I love the drama and I love the lust and the wanting and the unknown and the unrequited and the unfinished, and you want to know how you break the spell of that is that you return to your life. You return to your everyday. And I'm sure it does feel cold to block. And guess what? We don't know what the parameters of a relationship are. We don't know what that would look like. You don't have to cut this person out of your life. Maybe. But also it's not cold. It's saying the way our relationship is right now is not sustainable to something that is healthy and secure and long lasting, right? So now we have to change it. So how do you change it? By putting space and distance so that you can access a different response, a different emotional feeling. Do you know what I mean? And I do think it's not necessarily a case of forbidden fruit, because I do believe that all of your feelings are real and valid. It's not just like, oh my God, I can't have them, so I'm making up all this, whatever. I believe your feelings are real because you have a intimate relationship with this person. But the fact that you can't be with them because that you can't see it through, and you sort of tasted the idea of it, it's making you fixate a little bit, right? It's making you stay somewhere that is not emotionally safe for you for the sake of the unknown and for the sake of your quote friendship. Unfortunately, we're with your partner on this one.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, we're with you. We love you.
All this to say, I don't think that Phoebe's a bad person. I can understand that she's probably really wonderful. You wouldn't have these feelings for her if she wasn't somebody who was interesting and intriguing and possibly someone where you could build emotional strength with. But in this moment, because of her inability to be there for you emotionally, physically, spiritually, all of the things, right? She's not the person for you right now. And the more time you spend trying to, shoehorn her into some sort of understanding, actually shoehorn yourself into what is available to you in your relationship with her, which is not very much, right? The more time that you're going to be fixated and freaking out and having all of these really big feelings and emotions about this person. So what does it look like for you, again, to take a step back and have some breathing room? Allow yourself to take up more space in your understanding of yourself, in your understanding of what you're worthy of, and commit to things and people and places and experiences that are available to you, that are actually going to reciprocate all of the love and passion and beauty that you are able to give to people and to experiences. We say this to you because we love you, and because we know that you are more deserving of good, true love that's actually going to be fulfilling and sustainable for you, and that you're not going to have to try and force yourself into the tiny space that they're offering you.
Right. All right, my darling, we hope this helps.
Thank you so much for writing. We love you. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for listening. If you would like more content from us, or if you would like to get access to our Stop it.
I am not wearing pants right now.
It'll be easy for you. Or if you would like access to our monthly office hours, you could support us on Patreon. If you support us on Patreon for as little as $5 a month, you'll get an additional bonus weekly episode as well as access to those monthly office hours. That's patreon.com/justbreakuppod.
You can slide into our DMs, send us your favorite relationship memes, but most importantly, you can submit your questions about all matters of the heart at justbreakuppod.com, which is also where you can find our merchandise.
Please remember to like, follow, subscribe, give us a 5-star rating and review. This literally keeps our mics on and helps us reach more brokenhearted souls who need two random strangers giving them relationship advice.
Just Break Up is a production of Duvid Media, original music recording, editing, producing, all magical things by our good friend Spencer Worth Davis. Make sure to check out his podcasts and his music. And remember, the distance we put between ourselves and other people isn't necessarily because they have been cruel to us or because they deserve to be ignored or anything. It's because we deserve space and clarity and time. Things like blocks, things like no contacts, they are for us to collect ourselves, to access our true emotions, to heal, to care for ourselves and move forward. And if all else fails,
Just break up.